Section 13 of The Astral Plane, Its Inhabitants, Scenery, and Phenomena by C.W. Ledbetter. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Phenomena. Though in the course of this paper various superphysical phenomena have been mentioned, and to some extent explained, it will perhaps, before concluding, be desirable so far to recapitulate as to give a list of those which are the most frequently met with by the student of these subjects, and to show by which of the agencies we have attempted to describe they are usually caused. The resources of the astral world, however, are so varied that almost any phenomenon with which we are acquainted can be produced in several different ways, so that it is only possible to lay down general rules in the matter. Apparitions, or ghosts, furnish a very good instance of the remark just made, for, in the loose manner in which the words are ordinarily used, they may stand for almost any inhabitant of the astral plane. Of course, psychically developed people are constantly seeing such things. But for an ordinary person to see a ghost, as the common expression runs, one of two things must happen. Either that ghost must materialize, or that person must have a temporary flash of psychic perception. But for the fact that neither of these events is a common one, ghosts would be met with in our streets as frequently as living people. If the ghost is seen hovering about a grave, it is probably the etheric shell of a newly buried person, though it may be the astral body of a living man haunting in sleep the tomb of a friend. Or again, it may be a materialized thought form, that is, an artificial elemental, created by the energy with which a man thinks of himself as present at that particular spot. These varieties would be easily distinguishable one from the other by anyone accustomed to use astral vision, but an unpracticed person would be quite likely to call them all, vaguely, ghosts. Apparitions at the time of death are by no means uncommon, and are very often really visits paid by the astral form of the dying man just before what we elect to call the moment of dissolution. Though here again, they are quite likely to be thought forms called into being by his earnest wish to see some friend once more before he passes into an unfamiliar condition. Apparitions at the spot where some crime was committed are usually thought forms projected by the criminal, who, whether living or dead, but most especially when dead, is perpetually thinking over again and again the circumstances of his action. And since these thoughts are naturally specially vivid in his mind on the anniversary of the original crime, it is often only on that occasion that the artificial elementals he creates are strong enough to materialize themselves to ordinary sight, a fact which accounts for the periodicity of some manifestations of this class. Another point in reference to such phenomena is that whenever any tremendous mental disturbance has taken place, wherever overwhelming terror, pain, sorrow, hatred, or indeed any kind of intense passion has been felt, an impression of so very marked a character has been made upon the astral light that a person with even the faintest glimmer of psychic faculty cannot but be deeply impressed by it, and it would need but a slight temporary increase of sensibility to enable him to visualize the entire scene, to see the event in all its detail apparently taking place before his eyes. And in such a case, he would, of course, report that the place was haunted, and that he had seen a ghost. Indeed, people who are as yet unable to see psychically under any circumstances are frequently very unpleasantly impressed when visiting such places as we have mentioned. There are many, for example, who feel uncomfortable when passing the site of Tyburn Tree, or cannot stay in the Chamber of Horrors at Madame Tussaud's, though they may not be in the least aware that their discomfort is due to the dreadful impressions in the astral light which surround places and objects redolent of horror and crime, and to the presence of the loathsome astral entities which always swarm about such centers. The family ghost, whom we generally find in the stock stories of the supernatural as an appendage of the feudal castle, may be either a thought form or an unusually vivid impression in the astral light, or again, he may really be an earthbound ancestor still haunting the scenes in which his thoughts and hopes centered during life. Another class of hauntings, which take the form of bell ringing, stone throwing, or the breaking of crockery, has already been referred to, and is almost invariably the work of elemental forces, either set blindly in motion by the clumsy efforts of an ignorant person trying to attract the attention of his surviving friends, or intentionally employed by some childishly mischievous nature spirit. The nature spirits are also responsible for whatever of truth there may be in all the strange fairy stories which are so common in certain parts of the country. Sometimes a temporary accession of clairvoyance, which is by no means uncommon among the inhabitants of lonely mountainous regions, enables some belated wayfarer to watch their joyous gambols. Sometimes strange tricks are played upon some terrified victim, and glamour is cast over him, making him, for example, see houses and people where he knows none really exist. And this is frequently no mere momentary delusion, for a man will sometimes go through quite a long series of imaginary but most striking adventures, and then suddenly find that all his brilliant surroundings have vanished in a moment, leaving him standing in some lonely valley or upon some windswept plain. On the other hand, it is by no means safe to accept as founded on fact all the popular legends on the subject, where the grossest superstition is often mingled with the theories of the peasantry about these beings, as was shown by a recent terrible murder case in Ireland. To the same entities must be attributed a large portion of what are called physical phenomena at spiritualistic seances. Indeed, many a seance has been given entirely by these mischievous creatures, and such a performance might easily include many very striking items, such as the answering of questions and delivery of pretended messages by raps or tilts, the exhibition of spirit lights, the apport of objects from a distance, the reading of thoughts which were in the mind of any person present, the precipitation of writings or drawings, and even materializations. In fact, the nature spirits alone, if any of them happen to be disposed to take the trouble, could give a seance equal to the most wonderful of which we read. For though there may be certain phenomena which they would not find easy to reproduce, their marvelous power of glamour would enable them without difficulty to persuade the entire circle that these phenomena also had duly occurred, unless indeed there were present a trained observer who understood their arts and knew how to defeat them. As a general rule, whenever silly tricks or practical jokes are played at a seance, we may infer the presence either of low-class nature spirits or of human beings who were of a sufficiently degraded type to find pleasure in such idiotic performances during life. As to the entities who may communicate at a seance, or may obsess and speak through an entranced medium, their name is simply legion. There is hardly a single class among all the varied inhabitants of the astral plane from whose ranks they may not be drawn, though after the explanations given, it will be readily understood that the chances are very much against their coming from a high one. A manifesting spirit may be exactly what it professes to be, but on the whole, the probabilities are that it is nothing of the kind, and for the ordinary sitter there is absolutely no means of distinguishing the true from the false, since the extent to which a being having all the resources of the astral plane at his command can delude a person on the physical plane is so great that no reliance can be placed even on what seems the most convincing proof. If something manifests which announces itself As a man's long-lost brother, he can have no certainty that its claim is a just one. If it tells him of some fact known only to that brother and to himself, he remains unconvinced, for he knows that it might easily have read the information from his own mind, or from his surroundings in the astral light. Even if it goes still further and tells him something connected with his brother of which he himself is unaware, but which he afterwards verifies, he still realizes that even this may have been read from the astral record, or that what he sees before him may be only the shade of his brother, and so possesses his memory. It is not for one moment denied that important communications have sometimes been made at seances by entities who, in such cases, have been precisely what they said they were. All that is claimed is that it is quite impossible for the ordinary person who visits a seance ever to be certain that he is not being cruelly deceived in one or other of half a dozen different ways. There have been a few cases in which members of the Lodge of Occultists, referred to above as originating the spiritualistic movement, have themselves given, through a medium, a series of valuable teachings on deeply interesting subjects. But this has invariably been at strictly private family seances, not at public performances for which money has been paid. To understand the methods by which a large class of physical phenomena are produced, it is necessary to have some comprehension of the various resources mentioned above, which a person functioning on the astral plane finds at his command. And this is a branch of the subject which it is by no means easy to make clear, especially as it is hedged about with certain obviously necessary restrictions. It may perhaps help us if we remember that the astral plane may be regarded as, in many ways, only an extension of the physical, and the idea that matter may assume the etheric state, in which, though intangible to us, is yet purely physical, may serve to show us how the one melts into the other. In fact, in the Hindu conception of Jagrat, or the waking state, the physical and astral planes are combined, its 7 subdivisions, corresponding to the 4 conditions of physical matter and the 3 broad divisions of astral matter, explained above. With this thought in our minds, it is easy to move a step further and grasp the idea that astral vision, or rather astral perception, may, from one point of view, be defined as the capability of receiving an enormously increased number of different sets of vibrations. In our physical bodies, one small set of slow vibrations is perceptible to us as sound. Another small set of much more rapid vibrations affects us as light, and again, another set as electric action. But there are immense numbers of intermediate vibrations which produce no result which our physical senses can cognize at all. Now it will readily be seen that if all, or even some only, of these intermediates, with all the complications producible by differences of wavelength, are perceptible on the astral plane, our comprehension of nature might be very greatly increased on that level, and we might be able to acquire much information which is now hidden from us. It is admitted that some of these pass through solid matter with perfect ease, so that this enables us to account scientifically for some of the peculiarities of astral vision, though those minds to which the theory of the 4th dimension commends itself find it a neater and more complete explanation. It is clear that the mere possession of this astral vision by a being would at once account for his capability to produce many results that seem very wonderful to us, such, for example, as the reading of a passage from a closed book. And when we remember, furthermore, that this faculty includes the power of thought reading to the fullest extent, and also, when combined with the knowledge of the projection of currents in the astral light, that of observing a desired object in almost any part of the world, we see that a good many of the phenomena of clairvoyance are explicable even without rising above this level. Of course, true, trained, and absolutely reliable clairvoyance calls into operation an entirely different set of faculties. But as these belong to a higher plane than the astral, they form no part of our present subject. The faculty of accurate prevision, again, appertains altogether to that higher plane, yet flashes, or reflections, of it frequently show themselves to purely astral sight, more especially among simple-minded people who live under suitable conditions. What is called second sight among the Highlanders of Scotland being a well-known example. Another fact which must not be forgotten is that any intelligent inhabitant of the astral plane is not only able to perceive these etheric vibrations, but can also, if he has learnt how it is done, adapt them to his own ends, or himself set them in motion. End of section 13.